introduce myself again. My name is Tom Gagliano. I have a master's degree in social work, CMAT certificate in drugs and alcohol. I'm a keynote speaker. My website is The Problem Was Me. So if anybody has any questions that they don't get to ask me in the question segment, please, you could send all your questions to my website and I will answer within a day, no more than 2. I'll shoot my answer to you as soon as I can. So please feel free to ask me any questions that you'd like. So today we're going to talk about talking to kids about the tough stuff. And there's a lot of tough stuff out there today. You know, we're dealing with the virus. We're dealing with violence. There's always drugs to talk to them about, and sex, death, divorce. So we're going to touch on all of those things as we go along in this presentation. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to go over the 7 key areas that I spoke about yesterday, key communication tools that will infiltrate and flow into each one of these areas, because you'll find these 7 specific essentials, you'll see them floating into every time we have conversations about each one with our children. Now, each one we might have a little bit of a different area that we talk about, but these essentials will be part of each one of these areas. And the most important piece for our children is to create a safe place, a place where they can share their feelings, where they're okay sharing whatever feelings they want. Not that they have to agree with us all the time. You know, many of us might have come from childhoods where we felt that if we didn't say what mom and dad or just mom or just dad wanted to hear, we were in trouble. So we lost that sense of self. And when you come from a childhood where you don't feel like your feelings matter, you will feel like you don't matter. And if you don't have that safety when you're communicating, there's a good shot that you might solicit some information from the wrong people. So we want to be able to create that safe place for our children, even if they say things sometimes that we say to Serenity Prayer, because it's like, oh my God, it's still okay. Validate and acknowledge. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to say, oh, wow, that makes sense. No, but I hear you. You know, you validate their feelings. You acknowledge what they're saying. You can certainly, of course, tell them how you feel, but it's important to keep that door of communication open for your children, where they feel like they're entitled to their own feeling. Because what we want is to create a child that goes out in the world with integrity, where they feel good about themselves, feel like they have the right to share their feeling, like they're important. So remember, a child that feels like their feelings are important feels like they're important. So one of the other things that I spoke about yesterday is when you see your child struggling with any of these things we're talking about, maybe you see fear with them, maybe you see them struggling with anger, maybe you see them struggling with sadness, whatever that is, stop and pause. Don't jump right in. You know, we have a tendency with our children, because we do love them so much, and we kind of want to fix things right away. We kind of see them in pain, and right away we're like, I got to fix that. No, you can't be in pain. No, that's not true. Life is about processing and regulating discomfort. That's a healthy person knows how to do that without acting out in the wrong way or acting with depression and isolation. So if your child's in pain, pause. Okay, you see them struggling with something, whatever they're struggling with, pause. Just take a second. Think about, again, what I said. What would you want to hear in all of these areas from your mom and dad at that age? Let that compassion guide what you say in the way you say it. There's plenty of time to kind of guide your children, to kind of tell them what they're doing wrong, tell them what they're doing right, kind of go with that. But in the beginning, let them feel their feelings. And just maybe sometimes when they're struggling, they need a hug. As I said the last time, I found that out with my son in that baseball game. When I was trying to figure out all these different things I had to do as a dad. What do I say? What do I do? And at the end of the day, what he wanted was a hug. That's what he wanted, a hug. So many times, let's relinquish jumping in, let them feel their feelings a little bit. It's okay. They're not going to die. And then think about what you would have wanted to hear. Okay, again, we're going to go through all of these things and we're going to incorporate all of these 7 pieces. Number 3, choose your battles with your child. Sometimes, you know, we got to let our kids put their hand in the fire a little bit. Not that we want them to do anything dangerous, But sometimes the best thing about life is they've got to figure it out themselves. If we're always in conversations and we're always trying to be right with them, well, they're going to stop listening to us. Because do you want to always talk to somebody that's always got to be right? I know I don't. So sometimes you got to relinquish that need to be right and choose closeness instead. Share your feelings. Listen, when I did that, this is what happened to me. I found out that I got myself in trouble. When I did that, here's what happened to me. I found out it was very painful when I did that. So again, it's not just being right, it's sharing some of your feelings. Bring your humanness into the conversation. A lot of times children want to see your humanness, to know that you don't always have to be right. Sometimes it's good to choose closeness instead. So that's another piece to always bring in. Another piece is monitoring your inner critic. What is that about? Well, be mindful of whatever you're passing down to your children. You know, I wrote this book, Don't Put Your Crap in Your Kid's Diaper, because the cleanup costs will last a lifetime. Many of us, and I know I've done it too, we put our fears in our kid's diaper, we put our expectations in our kid's diaper, we want for them so much sometimes that sometimes we're putting a lot of pressure on them. So monitor your inner critic. What does that also mean? Well, what were the messages and what role did you grow up with? Because there's a shot that that role will be put into your child's diaper as well. Let me give an example. Many of us grew up in a childhood where we were people pleasers, where somehow maybe things weren't going good between mom and dad, or mom was alone or dad was alone, and all of a sudden we got parentified, and it became our job as children to take care of our parents. That's not healthy, okay? We're supposed to take care of ourselves first, and then others after that. That's how it really works. That's not selfish, it's self-care, okay? Nice to take care of other people, but we have to remember to take care of ourselves, because we're the most important relationship we have. We're the common denominator. So monitor your inner critic. Think about, did you grow up in a perfectionistic childhood where you felt like you had to do everything right all the time? Did you grow up, as I said, as a people pleaser? Did you grow up as a caretaker where you took responsibility for everyone and you shouldn't have done that? Some of us recovering addicts, we grow up with that victim mentality where we blame everybody. So it's important to take a little inventory about your childhood, monitor your inner critic, and show your children that when you're wrong, you admit it, hey, I'm sorry, and that you're also willing to work on yourself, that it takes courage to work on yourself. Again, these are some of the things we bring into these situations as well. When we talk about all these difficult scenarios here, we want to show up congruent with our children. We want to be honest. We want to share our feelings. You know, my fear is this. My fear is that you'll get into this violence. So my fear is that if you became pregnant, that it'll hurt you, that you'll be a mom or you'll be a dad so early in your life, or whatever your fears are. It's okay to express that to your children, but be congruent. Don't tell your children you're not afraid if you're shaking like a leaf. They have to trust you, which means you got to mean what you say and say what you mean. You got to show up congruent, because some of us as parents, we're afraid to show our children our feelings, yet they sense what our feelings are. So we're really not being honest, and it's confusing to children, and they could stop trusting you when you don't mean what you say and when you don't say what you mean. So take a little inventory, monitor your inner critic, and look at the things you need to work on to be a better parent, and you need to work on to like yourself better. Because again, we can't give our children what we don't have. And if we don't really like ourselves, we're not going to be able to transport into our children that self-esteem. Believe me when I tell you that. So it's important to work on yourself. Monitor your inner critic. I talk about celebrating your child's victories, right? And I didn't say you celebrate everything. If all you're doing with your children is telling them how great they are, how great they are, how great they are, they're going to stop listening to that. It's unfortunate, but they will, because you're telling them too much of how great they are, and they're going to say, they'll stop believing it to some extent. So celebrate the victories. When they do something that they're proud of, even if it's something that maybe is not a big deal to you, celebrate that. Build that self-esteem up. It's really important. You know, one of the things that I tell parents that they have to be very careful with is that, let's say you have two kids, and one kid just happens to be very gifted in school and gets A's. And the other kid, well, isn't that great in school. It happens. I was really not a great student, no matter how hard I tried. I just wasn't. It's important when you validate and celebrate your child's feelings for getting a good grade. If there's another child there, Compliment and validate their effort, not the grade. Because if you're going to say to one child, I'm so proud of you that you get A's, and the other child is listening and just can't get A's because they just don't have it in them, that could be a message that helps one child but hurts the other child. And you don't want those siblings to have rivalry like that. And it will happen like that. It will happen like that. Better compliment the effort. I'm so proud of you that you try so hard in school. See, every child can try hard in school, but not every child can get A's. So again, be mindful a little bit about celebrating those victories. And what I wanted to say before, and I forgot, is that we have to remember that, everybody doesn't get a trophy. That's really not how life works. It's really not. Everybody doesn't get rewarded for nothing all the time or for mediocrity all the time. We don't. So we have to teach our children that we can fail at times. It's all right. We all fail. We want our children to know when we fail, let's stop. Let's look at what was the opportunity. How could we proceed going ahead? Because we don't want them to fail and feel like a failure. It's important. Next piece is curious with our children in all of these areas, whether it's the virus, sex, death, divorce, drugs, violence. Ask questions. Keep asking questions. Just don't talk at them. Talk to them. Ask them questions all the time. When you ask a child a lot of questions, it makes them feel like they're important. And also be curious to know, again, as I said yesterday, what sites they're on, who their friends are. It's very important. It's very important. We're talking today, and we'll go to the last piece is mistakes. And again, it's important for them to understand the choices they make have the consequences that bestow them. Well, you make the rules in the house. If you choose not to come in a certain time, choose not to go out the next day. If you choose to break the law, if you choose to go to jail. Our children need to know that the choices they make create the consequences they have. And that we're going to get into the specifics in a minute, but these are the things that are very important that will get pulled into all of the things that we're going to talk about now. It's important. Making mistakes is a part of humanness. So we want to give our children consequences, but we don't want to dehumanize them to think they are a mistake. It's very important. That means when you give consequences, do the best you can. We're not all perfect. Try not to yell and scream at them when you're giving consequences. Okay? I know it's tough. I've many times did that, had to make an amends and apologize. I had a situation with my son the other day. I got very upset at him because of something that he did. And I yelled at him and he came in and this is where at least I create that safe environment. He came in to me and he said, Dad, you were right. I should have done that. You asked me to do that twice and I didn't do that. You're right. But when you yell at me like that, I don't think that's right either. He says, I was wrong and I apologize to you. And I'm going to take care of what you asked me to take care of. When you yell at me like that though, Dad, I don't think you should do that. And he's right. I'm sorry. He's right. I don't have to yell. I can give him consequences without yelling. We're all human. We all sometimes react instead of pause. Nobody's perfect, but we got to work on that. Again, when I wrote my book, it's about don't put your crap in your kid's diaper. It's not a book based on bashing parents. Parenting is tough as can be. We all make mistakes. It's about looking at part of our parenting skills that are good and strong, and then looking at those areas that need some attention. That's what my book is about. And nobody does it perfect. I've been successful in a lot of things in my life. And I can tell you being a parent is as tough as any of them come. So we talk about healthy shame and toxic shame. Healthy shame is when our children make mistakes and the shame of their mistake helps them not to make the mistake again. When a child grows up with healthy shame, meaning that they feel like they don't matter to you, that mistake keeps running through their head and eventually will paralyze them not to try and move forward in their life. Again, they'll become so afraid of failing that they won't even try. So we want to give them healthy shame, not toxic shame. And I know a lot of therapists and a lot of professors will say there's no such thing as healthy shame. They could be right. My opinion, we have two different shames. We've got toxic shame and regular shame. Regular shame teaches us to improve. Toxic shame keeps us paralyzed in our mistakes. So again, one of the things that we deal with in parenting today that is so powerful is the social media. The influx of television, magazines, social media. I don't care how great a parent you are, you can't protect your children from all of these things, from what's going on with the virus, from what's going on with the violence, when somebody dies, a divorce. We can't hold them at bay with all of these stuff coming in. What do? We become the best parent we can be, and that's all we can do. And again, one of the key pieces is to keep that area of communication open. That's very important. So now let's go into certain areas. So let's go into the virus. You know, we may think we know how our children feel about this virus, but there's a good shot that we could be wrong. That's why we ask questions. What do you think of this? Are you afraid? Are you scared? You let them tell you how they feel. You don't put your feelings in their diaper. Let them express to you their feelings. It does scare me. Well, I'm not that scared. Talk to them. Talk to them. Let them share their feelings. You know, it's very different when you see through the lenses of a child and you see through the lenses of an adult, thinking they remember what it's like to be a child. So many times we may think we know how our children think. And I can't tell you how surprising you might be. And other parents have told me when they ask a lot of questions that they're very surprised that of some of the answers. So when it comes to this virus and the fear, and plus you have the media, all different stations giving you different things. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is something that nobody knows, nobody had a blueprint on. Nobody knows exactly how to deal with this. So because nobody knows how to deal with this, there's going to be a lot of different emotions. So just keep the communications open with your child. Keep talking to your child, not at your child, about their feelings with this virus. That's what's important. So now let's talk about how do you talk to your child about sex? It can be very uncomfortable sometimes. Many of us will say, well, I don't want to do that. I can tell every parent out there that uncomfortable conversations are the most important conversations. Don't let that conversation skip. Don't. Again, talking to your child about sex is about talking to them about the consequences. Play the tape forward. What happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? Keep talking to them. Even sometimes, you know, you could solicit the computer in good ways. Go on the computer, find things out about certain things, about diseases, about this, about that. Go with your child on the computer. Research it with your child. Make it a team game where you both see certain things and you don't let certain things remain unspoken. Because children are like little market researchers. They always kind of know not only what you're saying, but what you're not saying. And one of the challenges when it comes to sex is wanting not to talk about it. But I urge you, have the uncomfortable conversations. You could share your fears with your child. As long as you don't tell them it should be their fears, share your fears. Let them think about it. Let them process these things. You know, I always say, and I believe this from the bottom of my heart, we can't control our children's behaviors. We can't. Eventually, they're going to do what they want to do, especially when those hormones erupt, when they get their license, when things happen. You're not going to hold all that back. The best thing we can do is instill values in our children where they choose the right behaviors and the right actions, not because we're telling them to, because they want to, because they want to choose the right behaviors. That's the very best thing that we can do with our children. So when talking about sex, it's important to, again, try your best to be curious with them, validate their feelings, even if it doesn't make sense, share your fears with them, and talk about the consequences that bestow them if they make the wrong choices. Don't lecture them, talk to them, run that tape forward. So how do we talk to them about violence? Well, I think that when you talk to your child about violence, it's got to be age appropriate. I think we try to shield our children from some of the horrible violent scenes that we see today in the media. But remember, to some children, that could create trauma in your child. That could create trauma if they're too young. Now, if you can't shield them from that, and they do see violence in the media, and they are aware of it, then you got to be honest about it. You can't lie to them. You got to say the truth. You got to say what's going on. You have to also, again, ask them, how do they feel? Are they scared? It's okay to be scared. I'm scared too. That's fine. Have those conversations with your child. Have the age again, all of the things that they see We can shelter them for what we can shelter them from, because it could create trauma if they're too young. But if they see it, then talk to them about it. And teach your children to be cautious about their surroundings. Be aware of their surroundings. You could even talk to them, what would you do if this happened? What would you do if this happened? You could play that tape forward. Make a plan with them forward. What would you do if this happened? What if this happened? What would you do? Teach your children to be cautious of their surroundings and cautious of who's around them and what they can do. So again, what we're doing is we're really getting them to open up their mind, to expand their thinking, but to expand their thinking, not around what only they think you want to hear, but to expand their thinking about how really they feel. It's very important. So let's go to another piece. How do you talk to your children about death when somebody dies, somebody you're close to? Again, don't leave it unspoken, because if you leave it unspoken, your children are going to make up a lot of stories in their head, and that's not fair to them. So talk to them about when a person dies that's close to them that they're aware of. Talk to them about, what did you like about him? What didn't you like about him? Talk to me about him. You know, get them to talk about death in a healthy way, not in a way where you're just eliminating that from them, because that death is part of life. And it's very important to be able to have that communication with your children when somebody dies, not to leave it blank or to say, oh, they're too young for that. It's really important to, again, expand on that. Ask them how they're feeling. Ask them, what do they think? What did they like about the person? What didn't they like about the person? It's okay if you didn't like this about the person. That's all right. We're entitled. Talk to them. Keep creating that safe place. How do you talk to your children about divorce or breakup? This is very important. There's always 3 keys I talk about when it comes to a divorce or breakup. Now, I think I have some kind of world record on this, because my mother and father got divorced from each other 3 times. And I don't know if there's too many people that had that. They broke up, they got divorced, they broke up, they got divorced. In fact, the funny thing was, I remember when my father was in the hospital and he was dying of cancer, and he was all hooked up to morphine, and my parents forgot if they were divorced or not, and we had to perform a little marriage ceremony in the hospital. Yeah, not that I came from a dysfunctional family, mind you, but that was a little bit about how I grew up. But I will tell you what I would have wanted more than anything from my parents who were fighting is, number one, I would have liked my parents to keep reinforcing to me that I was not the problem. We go back to what I've been talking about consistently, and that's egocentricity. Children always think the world revolves around them at a young age. Their brain has not developed with empathy and with understanding. So what happens at a young age when parents get divorced, sometimes the child believes that, gee, maybe if I was a better kid. So when there's a breakup and when there's a divorce, keep reemphasizing to your children that it's not their fault. The second important thing in a breakup or a divorce is not to manipulate your children with your ex. What does that mean? That means don't ask your kids a lot of questions about your ex, and it's good the other way around, that your ex doesn't ask a lot of questions about you. We don't want to create in our children the thinking that they're pawns, they're manipulative pieces to find out information on. They're not going to feel good about themselves. They're not going to feel important. And I'll tell you, children like that grow up very manipulative themselves. So you don't want to use one child to find out what your ex is doing in their life. Leave that alone. Be the best parent you can be. You can't be the best parent they can be, but you can be the best parent you can be. If you're doing the right thing with your children, you can't make your other parent do the right thing with your children. Just stay focused on what you got to do, and don't manipulate your child to solicit information from the other parent. And the last thing that's really important is, if you do go on and you meet somebody else and you have a family again or children again, never forget your children, those kids that you left in that divorce or that breakup. Always remember, you're always going to be their first heroes. You're always going to be important to them. And remember to always make them important to you, okay? Don't abandon them. Those scars, I can tell you, can last a lifetime. So the 3 things, again, real quick, is validate that it's not your child's fault. Don't manipulate your child against your ex-partner. And also don't forget about making them important to you if you do go on to meet somebody else. So with that said, I'm going to go into a different area here. And one of the things I tell parents is don't always assume your child feels the same way you do. You know, with limited experiences, they may not have the same vision you do. This is, again, why I talk about these 7 tools to keep talking to your children about how they see the world and how they view their feelings. Don't make assumptions. It's also important to say what you mean what you say, so that they can trust what you say after that, and that they don't start to not trust the words that you give them. And also, it's important to also know what are your triggers in conversations and what are their triggers in conversation. We all have triggers in conversations. It's a good idea to know each other's triggers so that we don't trigger each other. Once we're triggered, we shut down our ability to hear each other. So it's important to know what those triggers are when you're having those conversations with your kids, because all those actions, all those triggers are really recorded in their mind, and they don't forget it. And of course, be congruent. Mean what you say and say what you mean, because it's really important to show up in a way with your children that they can trust what you're saying is truth and they're not doubting it. Because if they're doubting it, they might go somewhere else to solicit that information. So I think I'm about done with what I wanted to talk about with this. I guess I'll go into my quick little promotion that I'm supposed to do. And that is, again, to go, anybody interested, go to my website if they want to see some of my other speaking engagements, my television appearances. I've been on Dr. Oz radio with Jenny McCarthy, John Fugelsang. Go there, have fun. I am running a promotion on my digital products. One is on enhancing the intimacy in your life, couples, and the other is strengthening your parenting skills. That website is theproblemwasme.com. If you want to check out some of my podcasts or Instagrams, it's also theproblemwasme.com. And if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, it's Thomas Gagliano. Now, the promotional code, if you put in Script Conference 20, we're having a 40% off on the digital products. And there's also a free Don't Put Your Crap in Your Kid's Diaper book that also comes with that. So enjoy them either way. Go to my website, have some fun. Any questions, leave it there. And even if you don't purchase anything, just enjoy. I have some media reels on there and stuff. And that's it.
All right. Please let us know if you want to go in the Q&A. I will be joining Tommy in there also. And then Nita will be up to get us moving after Tommy is on. And then we will be doing our awards. And our closing with Robert Hernandez from USC.
And thank you, Deb, for having me join the Script Conference. It's been an honor, a pleasure. And as I always say, you know, when I talk about some of the stuff I talk about comes from my experiences in my life. So everybody who listens to me, just take what you can use, leave the rest. That's really what it's about. But thank you, Deb.
You're very, very welcome. And I hope you come back next year, because you're now part of the Script family. And in part of the Script family, I don't let you go.
You got it. I ain't going nowhere.